Linda Noskova humiliates Alex Eala in Berlin. The Czech sensation tore through her Filipino rival in just 69 minutes, and the tennis world is left speechless. Eala had spent an entire week slaying giants. She had taken down a former Wimbledon champion. She had toppled a top 10 veteran. And then, in the biggest match of her career so far, she ran straight into the one player who has owned her completely. This wasn't supposed to happen twice, but it did. And by the end, the silence in Steffi Grau's stadion said everything words couldn't. Stick around, because this story is bigger than one scoreline. It's about a rivalry that refuses to bend, a young star chasing redemption, and a brutal reminder that in tennis, history has a habit of repeating itself. To understand what happened on that grass court in Berlin, you have to go back to the start of the week, to a story that for a few glorious days felt like it belonged in a movie. Alex Eala arrived at the Berlin Open as a wild card, not a seed, not a favorite, just a 21-year-old from the Philippines carrying momentum from a breakthrough title run in Birmingham and a grass season that had already turned heads. She was 8 wins and 1 loss on grass for the year. Quietly, almost without anyone outside hardcore tennis circles noticing, Eala had become one of the most dangerous floaters in the draw. Then came the moment that announced her to the wider tennis world. In the second round, she walked onto the court against Elena Rybakina, the reigning Australian Open champion, a former Wimbledon winner, the world's number 2. On paper, it was a mismatch. Rybakina was supposed to dismantle her, and for a set and a half, it looked like exactly that. Rybakina came out firing aces, racing to a 4-1 lead, looking every bit the Grand Slam champion she is. But something shifted. Eala dug in. She broke back. She found her range on return. She rallied from that early deficit to win 7-5, 6-4, sealing one of the biggest upsets of her career. Afterward, still trembling from the adrenaline, she grabbed her phone before she'd even finished her on-court interview. She called her father. "I just said, oh my God," she admitted later. "We were just screaming. My mom was there too. I'm really happy." She told reporters she was a little foggy, still shaking even on match point. It was raw, it was real, and it was the kind of moment that makes you fall in love with a player. That win alone would have made her weak, but Eala wasn't done. 2 days later, she faced Elena Svitolina, the world number 8, a former Wimbledon semifinalist and a player Eala had idolized growing up. This time, there was no slow start. Eala raced to an early lead and closed out the first set in just 32 minutes, eventually winning 6-3, 6-4. It was her second top 10 win of the week and her 6th career win over a top 10 opponent. What she said afterward revealed something about who she is, beyond the results. "Elena is a huge fighter, and I've seen it many times," Eala said. "I've been watching her since I was a kid, so to be able to compete with her today is such an honor. I really admire her. She's a mother. I find her to act with such elegance and strength." It wasn't the kind of quote you script for a press conference. It was sincere. It was a young athlete genuinely in awe of the player she had just beaten. By Friday night, the numbers were staggering. 2 wins over top 10 opponents in 2 days, a deep run as a wild card, a grass court winning percentage that put established names to shame. Wimbledon was just a week away, and suddenly, Alex Eala's name was trending for all the right reasons. But tennis has a cruel sense of timing. Waiting for her in the semifinal was a name that should have made her stomach drop the moment the draw came out, Linda Noskova. Because Eala and Noskova had already met once before, and what happened in that match was not a contest. It was a lesson, one that Eala had no choice but to carry with her into Berlin, whether she wanted to or not. Every great sports story has a shadow hanging over it, a moment from the past that refuses to stay in the past. For Alex Eala, that shadow had a name: Indian Wells, March 2026. It happened on hard courts, in the round of 16 of the BNP Paribas Open. Eala walked in with confidence. She walked out, having won just 2 games. The final score read 6-2, 6-0, 56 minutes, 7 aces, 0 double faults from Noskova. It wasn't a tennis match. It was a public dismantling. For most players, a loss like that gets buried under the next tournament, the next opponent, and next chance to move forward. But this one stuck. It had to. Because losing 6-2, 6-0 isn't just a defeat. It's the kind of result that lingers in a player's mind, quietly, until they're forced to face that same opponent again. And Eala knew the rematch was coming. When the Berlin draw revealed her path to a possible semifinal against Noskova, she didn't hide from the history. She confronted it directly, with a level of honesty that's rare in pro sports. She's a big hitter, and she's young, but she has a lot of experience, and she's very powerful, Eala said of Noskova, ahead of their semifinal. Then she added the line that mattered most. My last match with her proved to be very difficult for me. So coming into the semifinals, I hope to prepare and make some improvements and show what I've got. Read that quote again. There's no excuse making in it, no deflection, just a young athlete admitting plainly that she had been beaten badly and that she was determined to be better this time. It's the kind of vulnerability that makes you root for someone even harder. But the numbers around this rivalry told a story that was bigger than just one bad day against one tough opponent. Eala's record against Czech players as a whole was brutal. 1 win in 13 meetings. Losses to Teresa Martinkova. Losses to Marie Boskova. A first-round exit at Wimbledon last year to Barbora Krejcikova. Losses to Katerina Siniakova, to Teresa Valentova, to Karolina Mukova. Whatever it was, playing style, matchup problems, sheer bad luck, something about facing Czech opponents had become Eala's kryptonite. And now here was Linda Noskova, 21 years old herself, ranked world number 8 coming into the tournament, fresh off her own demolition of Paula Badosa in the quarterfinals, 6-1, 6-3. Noskova hadn't dropped a single set all week. She was playing with the kind of free, fearless aggression that makes broadcasters sit up straighter in their chairs. While Eala had been grinding through 3-set battles and dramatic comebacks, Noskova had been cruising, efficient, ruthless, almost bored by the lack of resistance. This was the matchup tennis fans didn't know they needed until it was staring them in the face. On one side, a wild card riding the emotional high of her career, fueled by upsets over Rybakina and Svitolina, desperate to finally solve the puzzle that had haunted her since March. On the other side, a player who had already proven in the most one-sided way possible that she had Eala's number. Something had to give. Either Eala would complete the storybook week with a statement win over her tormentor, or Noskova would remind the entire tennis world exactly why this matchup wasn't close to even. The rain.
Saturday in Berlin arrived with rain. The skies over stuffy Graf Stadium turned gray, the start time pushed back, and for a few tense hours, all anyone could do was wait. There's a particular kind of tension that builds during a rain delay before a must-watch match, the anticipation stretching tighter with every passing minute, the questions multiplying. Would the delay favor Eala, giving her more time to prepare mentally for the rematch she'd been dreading and craving in equal measure? Or would it favor Noskova, who'd shown all week that she could turn matches on and off like a switch? When the players finally walked onto the court, the answer came almost immediately, and it wasn't the one Eala's growing army of new fans wanted to hear. Noskova broke serve in the very first game of the match. It was a statement, delivered in the opening minutes, before the crowd had even settled into their seats. Eala managed to break back almost immediately, leveling things at 1-1, and for a brief moment, it looked like the contest might breathe. But that breath didn't last. Noskova broke again, then again. The Czech raced through the first set with a kind of ruthless efficiency that left no room for hope to build. She would later admit the conditions had thrown her off slightly at the start. I just had to adjust my game today, maybe a little bit because of the rain and maybe the temperature dropped a little bit, she said. But as the match went on and we had new balls, I kind of started to feel better and better. That adjustment came fast, brutally fast. By the time the first set ended, the score read 6-2, just like Indian Wells. The number on the scoreboard wasn't just a result, it was a haunting echo. Here's a question worth sitting with. How do you fight a ghost? How do you walk onto a court against someone who has already beaten you so completely once before, without that memory creeping into your footwork, your decision-making, your serve? Eala had spoken openly about wanting to show what I've got in this rematch, but showing it against a player serving as confidently as Noskova was proving to be an entirely different challenge than saying it in a press conference. And there was something else happening, something the cameras caught during a changeover that added a layer of physical strain to the emotional one. Eala's left arm, her playing arm, was visibly taped above the elbow. Nothing was confirmed publicly about the extent of any issue, but for a player already fighting an uphill battle against history, even a minor physical concern can feel like one more obstacle piled onto an already steep climb. Noskova, meanwhile, looked like she was playing with house money. Her serve was producing free points at will. Her return game, already one of the... If Chapter 3 was about Noskova imposing her will, Chapter 4 is about Eala refusing to disappear without a fight, and about just how cruelly fast a fight can be extinguished once it starts to catch fire. The second set opened in familiar fashion. Noskova broke early, building a 3-1 lead, looking every bit like a player about to close this match out in routine fashion. For Eala's growing fan base, the same fans who had watched her topple 2 top 10 opponents in the space of 2 days, this had to feel like watching a fairy tale curdle in real time. Was this really how the week was going to end? Another 6-2, 6-something, another lopsided scoreline to file away under Noskova problem, unsolved. And then suddenly, it wasn't. Trailing 2-3, Eala dug into something. Call it pride, call it the memory of Indian Wells refusing to let her go quietly, call it simply the competitive instinct that had carried her past Rybakina and Svitolina earlier that same week. She held serve, then she broke, then she held again. 3 straight games. The scoreboard flipped from a 3-1 deficit to a 4-3 lead, and for the first time all match, the crowd inside Steffi Graf Stadion had a reason to truly roar. Imagine being inside that stadium in that moment. Imagine the swing in emotion, from resignation to disbelief to genuine electric hope. Eala wasn't just hanging on anymore. She was threatening to do what nobody, perhaps not even she herself, fully believed was possible. Complete the upset of the tournament, turn the Indian Wells nightmare into a distant memory, and book her place in a maiden WTA-level final. For a few minutes, the entire complexion of the match, and possibly the entire narrative of the week, hung in the balance. But Linda Noskova did not get to world number 8, did not reach the semifinals of a WTA 500 event without a level of mental discipline that closes doors exactly when they threaten to swing open. Almost as if flipping a switch, she responded immediately. A love hold to level the set at 4-all, brisk and clean, snuffing out whatever momentum Eala has built. Then, in the very next game, a break at love, meaning Eala didn't win a single point on her own serve. The door that had cracked open for 3 games slammed shut in 2. From there was no second wind. Noskova closed out the match by securing one final crucial break in the 9th game, then served out the victory, finishing the contest with a forehand winner off a booming serve, and fittingly sealing it at the net with a crisp serve and volley point. Final score, 6-2, 6-4. Total time, 69 minutes, just 1 minute longer than Noskova's previous match. A match that briefly threatened to become a classic ended up, by the numbers, as another comfortable, clinical Noskova victory. The statistics, once they came in, painted a stark picture of just how dominant that performance really was. Noskova won 81.8% of her first serve points. She struck 9 aces. She finished with 33 winners against just 15 unforced errors, a ratio that borders on surgical. Let's step back from the emotion for a moment and look at what the cold, hard numbers actually reveal, because they tell a story of their own, one that goes beyond a single Saturday in Berlin. This was now the second meeting between Eala and Noskova, the second win for Noskova. The head-to-head sits at 2-0, with neither match coming remotely close. At Indian Wells, Eala won 2 games. In Berlin, she won 6. Technically an improvement, technically a sign of progress, technically the kind of detail a coach might point to as evidence of growth. But 6 games against 6-2, 6-4 is still a comprehensive defeat. Progress, in this case, is a very generous word for what actually happened on that grass court. Noskova, for her part, was almost disarmingly modest about her own dominance. I feel like I have to say something smart, like my serve or my shots, but I'm just feeling really comfortable on court, she said afterward. That's the core of where it's coming from. There's something almost unsettling about that quote, if you're an Eala fan. It wasn't a tactical masterclass. It wasn't a specific game plan engineered to exploit a weakness. It was simply a player who felt at ease, who trusted her game completely, and who happened to be playing the one opponent against whom that ease has translated into total domination, twice now. Is this officially a rivalry, or is rivalry too generous a word for what's actually a mismatch dressed up in dramatic buildup? That's a fair question to sit with. A rivalry typically implies competitiveness, unpredictability, the sense that either player could win on a given day. What Eala and Noskova have produced so far is something closer to a pattern, one dominant performance after another, separated by different surfaces and different scorelines, but united by the same outcome. And yet, dismissing this as simply one-sided ignores the context that surrounds it. Eala's struggles against Noskova exist within an even larger trend, that brutal 1-win-in-13 matches record against Czech opponents as a whole. This isn't just about one player's serve or one player's return game. There's something deeper happening when an otherwise fearless competitor, a player who has beaten Iga Swiatek, Madison Keys, and Coco Gauff in her career, repeatedly comes up short against players from one specific tennis nation. Whether it's a stylistic clash, a confidence issue specific to these matchups, or simply unfortunate coincidence stacked match after match, it's a puzzle Eala will need to solve if she wants her career to keep climbing at the rate her talent suggests it should. For Noskova, the win cemented an extraordinary week. She advanced to her 7th WTA Tour final, her first ever on grass, without dropping a single set across 4 matches in the tournament. The 6 games Eala took off her were remarkably the most any opponent managed against her all week, a strange kind of...
So here's the real question worth asking. the one that goes beyond a single scoreline in Berlin. Is this simply a mismatch that Eala will eventually grow out of, the way young players often do as they mature and adjust? Or has Linda Noskova found something, a tactical key, a psychological edge, that will make this matchup a recurring nightmare every single time these two meet for years to come? Only time and Wimbledon, and whatever comes after it, will tell us the answer. If you've made it this far, you already know this story isn't over. Not for Eala, not for Noskova, and not for anyone who's been swept up in the most dramatic grass season women's tennis has seen in years. Let us know in the comments, do you think Alex Eala can ever turn this rivalry around? And don't forget to subscribe, because this story, and so many others like it, is only just getting started.